Because of my sister's lies, my parents kicked me out and told me not to come back. When I showed proof, it changed everything, and now she is no longer a golden child. I'm 22 now, and I've always been the kind of guy who keeps to himself, work, save money, mind his own business. My parents and I had our occasional disagreements, but for the most part one thought we were okay. That is, until Emily decided to rock my world. Emily is my sister, 2 years younger than me, and she's always been the golden child. Straight A's, popular, the apple of my parents' eyes. I used to think it was harmless the way she got away with everything, the way they bought her expensive clothes or paid for her hobbies without a second thought, while I had to beg for $50 for something I needed. But this was different. This was personal. It all started when money started going missing. At first it was small amounts, like $20 missing from my dad's wallet, or my mom thinking she misplaced $50. Nobody said much at first. But then it got serious. $3,000 disappeared from their emergency savings. We're not a rich family. My dad works 2 jobs, my mom works part-time, and Uncle John, a bit of a drifter, lives with us because he's been out of work for a while. So when that much money disappeared, it caused a storm. My parents decided to have a family meeting over dinner. It was uncomfortable from the start. My father, visibly upset, said, "We have to get to the bottom of this. Someone in this house has taken the money." Everyone was quiet, just staring at each other. I could feel my heart pounding because I knew I didn't take it. Uncle John swore up and down that he hadn't either, and I believed him. My parents didn't even take him seriously. They always said he might be irresponsible, but never dishonest. Then Emily spoke. She stood up dramatically, as if this were some kind of courtroom. I didn't want to say anything. She began, her voice shaking just enough to sound believable. But I feel guilty knowing the truth. She looked right at me. It was him. For a second, I didn't even process it. "What?" I blurted, stunned. Emily started to tell me the whole story. She claimed that she'd caught me sneaking around the living room late at night, that she'd overheard me talking about needing money, and that she'd kept quiet because she didn't want to cause a drama. "But now I realize," she said, looking at my parents like she was their savior. "He's hurting both of you, and I can't let it go on. The worst part? She sold it." My parents believed her. They didn't even ask for my side of the story. My mom just looked at me, heartbroken, and said, "How could you?" I tried to defend myself. I told them that I didn't even have access to their emergency stash, that I had never taken anything from them in my life. But Emily just piled on lie after lie. She even threw in a punch. "Maybe it's time for him to move out. He's 22, he should be on his own by now." That hurt more than anything. I'd been helping out with the groceries, doing extra chores, even loaning my parents money when times were tight. And now they were kicking me out? My father just shook his head and said, "Pack your things. We can't trust you anymore." As I walked out of the house that night, Emily's smug look burned into my memory. I knew then that I wasn't just leaving, I was being set up. And I had to prove it. I headed to my grandmother's house with nothing but a backpack and no idea what to do next. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Emily get away with this. At my grandmother's house, I couldn't stop replaying that dinner in my head. Emily's lies, my parents' disappointment, it all felt like a bad dream. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. She had turned everyone against me with no proof, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I realized I couldn't do it alone. The only person who would believe me was Uncle John. He hadn't jumped to blame me that night, and I could tell he didn't quite believe Emily's story. So I called him. "Hey, Uncle John," I said. "I need your help." He didn't even hesitate. "Come by tomorrow when your parents aren't home. We'll figure it out." The next day he let me in while my parents were out. "What's the plan?" he asked. "I need proof," I said. "Something to show that Emily is the one who took the money." Uncle John nodded. "All right, let's start looking." We walked through her room, careful not to leave anything out. At first there was nothing, just her usual stuff. But then, hidden in the back of her closet, we found a shoebox. Inside was a stack of cash and some cheap jewelry with the tags still on. It wasn't the full amount, but it was enough to make sure I was right. "This is good," Uncle John said. "But is it enough?" "No," I said. "I need more. I'll get her to admit it." Uncle John raised an eyebrow. "How are you going to do that?" "I'm going to tape her. If I push her hard enough, she'll slip up." He grinned. "Bold move. I'll help you get in when the time is right, but you better know what you're doing." I nodded. I didn't know how this was going to go, but I couldn't let this go. Emily had set me up, and I was determined to make her pay. The plan was simple, but risky. Uncle John would let me into the house when my parents weren't home, and I would confront Emily with the recorder running. I didn't know if it would work, but at that point I didn't have much to lose. A few days later, Uncle John texted me. "They're leaving. Come now." I grabbed my backpack, which contained a dictaphone I had borrowed from my grandmother, and walked to the house. Uncle John opened the door and whispered, "She's in her room. Good luck." He slipped out, leaving me alone in the house with Emily. My heart was pounding as I walked up the stairs. I didn't even knock, I just walked right in. Emily looked up from her phone, startled. "What are you doing here?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. I shrugged. "Just wanted to talk." She rolled her eyes. "You're not supposed to be here. Mom and Dad said dash." "Yeah, I know what they said," I interrupted. "But I think you owe me an explanation." "For what?" she snapped. "For framing me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about." She laughed and leaned back in her chair. "Framing you? Please. You did that all by yourself." I could feel the anger rising, but I had to stay calm. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Taking the money, blaming me, and then playing the victim." Emily's smirk faltered for a second before it recovered. "You have no proof. Mom and Dad believe me. They always will." I leaned forward, sharpening my tone. "You really think they'd be on your side if they knew the truth? If they knew you were stealing from them?" That hit a nerve. She stood up and glared at me. "You don't get it, do you? I'm a young, beautiful girl. I need money. Until I find a rich husband, Mom and Dad will just have to make do, even if I have to take it myself." My chest tightened as I heard her admit it. But she wasn't finished. "They never believe you anyway," she went on. "They always loved me more than you." I didn't say anything, just let her continue to dig her own grave. 15 minutes of her ranting later, the sound of the front door slamming made us both freeze. My parents were home. "What's going on?" my mother said, entering the room, followed by my father. "What's he doing here?" I pulled out the recorder, my hand steady as I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. When it ended, Emily's face was bright red. She stammered something, but before she could defend herself, Uncle John came in. "Oh, by the way," he said, holding up the shoebox we'd found. "I found this in her room. I thought you might like to see it." My dad's face turned pale, and my mom looked like she was going to cry. Emily didn't say another word. She knew it was over. The room was deathly silent for what seemed like an eternity. My parents just stood there, staring at the recorder and the shoebox in Uncle John's hands. Emily, usually so quick with her comebacks, looked frozen. My father broke the silence first. "Emily, what the hell is this?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she looked at me, her face shifting between anger and despair. "It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like," my mother interrupted, her voice shaking. "We just heard you admit to stealing from us." Uncle John chimed in, dropping the shoebox on the bed. "And here's your missing money and the junk she bought with it. I found it hidden in her closet." Emily's face turned red as she stammered. "You snooped in my room? That's not fair." "Not fair?" my dad snapped. "You lied to us. You set up your own brother. And you want to talk about fairness? For the first time, I saw Emily lose her cool. I needed the money, she screamed. You don't understand. You've always given him the benefit of the doubt while I've had to fend for myself. I couldn't believe my ears. Fending for yourself? You're the golden child. You've always had everything handed to you. That's enough, my mother yelled, cutting us both off. She looked at Emily, her voice shaking. You stole from us and then lied to our faces. You turned this family upside down just to cover your tracks. Emily tried to respond, but my father had already made up his mind. Pack your things, he said. We don't want you here anymore. Her eyes went wide. What? You're kicking me out? You can't be serious. You didn't think twice about kicking your brother out, Uncle John said. What goes around comes around. Emily looked at my mother, hoping for support, but she shook her head. You have to go, Emily. We can't trust you anymore. As Emily stormed off to pack her things, my dad turned to me. We're so sorry, he said softly. We should have believed you. I nodded, but the weight of it all still wasn't gone. It wasn't the apology, it was how easily they believed her over me. Still, I didn't want to rub it in. I just said, I'm glad you know the truth now. When Emily came back downstairs with her bags, she didn't say a word to anyone. She just stared at me as she walked out the door. Uncle John chuckled to himself and shook his head. I guess the golden child's luster has worn off, he muttered. With Emily gone, the house felt different. My parents were quieter, as if they didn't know how to process what had just happened. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: things would never be the same. After Emily left, the house felt heavy. My parents apologized again later that night, but it was awkward. I could tell they were struggling to make sense of it all. They'd spent years putting Emily on a pedestal, and now that pedestal had crumbled. The next morning, my mother came to me as I sat at the kitchen table. She hesitated before speaking. We owe you more than an apology, she said. We should have listened to you, but we never thought Emily could do something like this. I understand, I said, though I didn't quite mean it. She had you fooled. My dad joined us, holding the shoebox Uncle John had found. We took this to the pawn shop first thing this morning. We got back what we could, but there's still a lot missing. I don't know what she did with the rest. She's probably spent it by now, I said. It's not coming back. They looked at each other, both looking older than they had a week ago. We're going to start paying more attention to what goes on in this house, my father said. No more blind trust. No more assumptions. At least that was something. Uncle John came in shortly thereafter, his usual carefree demeanor back in full force. You sticking around, kid? He asked, pouring himself a cup of coffee. That depends, I said, glancing at my parents. You're staying, my mother said firmly. This is your home. We're not letting you go anywhere. That settled it, but the damage wasn't so easy to undo. Over the next few days, I would catch my parents sitting in silence, as if replaying everything in their heads. Uncle John tried to lighten the mood with his usual jokes, but even he seemed to sense the change in the air. As for Emily, she was staying with our grandmother. She wasn't happy about it. Grandma wasn't the type to coddle anyone, not even her favorites. I'd heard from Uncle John that she'd already complained about being bored and having no pocket money. She thought she was untouchable, Uncle John said one night. I guess reality caught up with her. I couldn't argue with that. But even knowing that Emily was out of the house, I still felt unsettled. My parents had turned on me so quickly when things had gone wrong, and I couldn't forget that overnight. Sure, they'd apologized, but trust wasn't going to come back just because of a few kind words. For now, I focused on moving forward, one day at a time. The truth was out, and Emily's reign as golden child was over. That was enough for now. A week after Emily left, she returned. I wasn't shocked, it was only a matter of time. Grandma's no pushover, and Emily, for all her bravado, had never really faced consequences before. She showed up with her usual air of entitlement, But there was something different this time. Maybe it was the lack of her usual confidence, or the fact that she couldn't charm her way back in as easily as she thought. When she walked into the kitchen, my parents sat her down at the table. I stayed in the living room, pretending not to listen, but I didn't miss a word. "You can stay," my father said, his tone stern. "But there will be changes." "Big ones?" Emily crossed her arms. "Changes like what?" "You'll get a job," my mother said bluntly. "No more living off us. You've had it easy for 20 years, and that's going to stop." Emily rolled her eyes. "You're seriously making me work? I already told you, I don't dash." "Enough." My father cut her off. "You lied to us. You stole from us. And you set your brother up. That's not up for debate." For a moment, Emily looked like she was going to argue, but she must have realized it wasn't going to work this time. My dad continued, "I was talking to a friend of mine. He runs a grocery store. He's willing to hire you as a cashier. You start tomorrow." "A cashier?" she said, her voice rising. "That's so beneath me." "No," my mother said sharply. "What is beneath you is stealing from your family and expecting us to cover for you." Emily looked from one to the other, clearly looking for a way out. But it was clear that my parents were tired of playing their games. "So what? If I don't take the job, you'll kick me out again?" "You can stay here," my mother said. "But from now on, you pay for your own clothes, your own makeup, and any extras you want. If you don't want the job, that's up to you. But you won't be living here for free anymore." It was the first time I'd seen Emily backed into a corner. She huffed, mumbled something under her breath, and stomped upstairs. But the next day, like clockwork, she showed up for her first shift at the grocery store. At first, Emily was miserable. She came home every day complaining about the long hours, the rude customers, and the fact that she wasn't getting paid nearly enough. "I can't believe people live like this," she grumbled at dinner one night. Uncle John snorted. "Welcome to the real world, princess." She glared at him, but he wasn't wrong. For the first time in her life, Emily was learning what it meant to work for something. And to her credit, she stuck with it. She didn't quit, even when it was obvious she wanted to. But it wasn't just Emily who changed. My parents did too. It was as if her betrayal had shaken something loose in them. They began to set firmer boundaries not just with Emily, but with everyone. They apologized to me again, but this time it felt different. Real. "We should have been tougher on her from the beginning," my dad admitted one night. "We thought we were helping her, but we just made it worse." It was strange to hear him say that after all these years of treating her as if she could do no wrong. But it also felt good, like they were finally seeing things clearly. As for Uncle John, he was the same as always, laid back, joking around, and completely uninterested in getting a job. "You know," I said to him one day, "if Emily can handle working, so can you." He laughed. "Yeah, but she didn't have a choice. I'm fine right here." Typical Uncle John. At least he didn't steal money or cause drama. The house felt different after all this. The tension that had been there for so long was gone, replaced by something calmer. Emily was no longer the golden child, and my parents had learned the hard way that being too soft didn't help anyone. The money stopped disappearing, and for the first time in years, things felt stable. Emily was still Emily, complaining about her shifts and dreaming of finding a rich husband, but she was working, earning her own money, and dealing with the reality she'd avoided for so long.